Hi, I'm Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, and I promised in an earlier video that I would be looking at charts of the Russian Federation, Putin, the invasion chart, and Zelensky, Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. And that is what you're going to get here. Uncharacteristically, I am not doing this in a closed class, charging money for it, or allowing the participation of other people in discussing the charts. Instead, I am requesting that you make a donation to Ukrainian relief efforts or to relief efforts involving any country where people are being displaced by war. There's a lot of that going on this planet currently. If you donate to the channel, I will donate any receipts that I get to the World Central Kitchen, which has been on the ground for days already in Poland, and I believe also in Ukraine, serving food to displaced people. All right, now I am just going to blast through these charts. You're not going to get an in-depth analysis. I'm going to give you what I see pretty much off the top of my head. I do have notes. Okay, that's a notes. But I will let you look at clean little charts here because I'm being nice to you so you don't have to deal with my writing. Hang on a second. And I will get it up. Share screen. There we go. All right. We're starting with the Russian Federation chart. And I want to point out several things that may end up making a lot of sense in the news. And that is just looking at how this chart is calculated. First off, notice that there's this huge emphasis at the bottom of the chart. It's a very internal system, not much visible to the outer world. Big surprise there. I have just circled the two money planets are conjunct in this chart, very closely conjunct. Venus and Pluto at 21 and 22 degrees in the sign of Scorpio, which Pluto rules. So this is huge, secretive amounts of money, lots of secrets, possibly, oh, I don't know, this could be a signature for corruption. Lots of backroom stuff, lots of things you don't see, huge amounts of money, plutocracy. And indeed, the modern Russian Federation has been characterized by a rather small group of individuals called oligarchs. All right, I also want to draw your attention to Mercury and Mars connected together. They're pretty close, close enough that I would count it in the sign of Sagittarius. So there's a lot of information warfare, a lot of energy going on out into the world. And I will point out that this conjunction of information and military action basically straddles the United States ascendant in the 1776 chart known as the Sibley chart. I'm sure that surprises many people. And speaking of information, let's look at this nifty little conjunction too. And actually the North Node is part of it. Uranus and Neptune. Uranus, the trickster, Uranus, instability, Neptune, planet of, could be great spirituality, could be absolute deception. I call Neptune the cosmic fog machine, and note that this would certainly be a signature for disinformation. I also want to point out what's going on with Saturn. All right, Saturn on the 7th house cusp. The 7th house is the house of allies and open enemies. And Saturn is close enough that there are big power issues. There are issues with being contained or being the containing one. I want you to remember 5 degrees Aquarius. Just remember that. It's going to become important in a few minutes. And I will point out that last year, Saturn went across this degree. So this means last year in 2021, the Russian Federation had its Saturn return. Saturn came full cycle, and that So it is now entering a new cycle, building on what it has done before, building on the secretiveness, the information flow, the money, the whatever. And you'll see also, I'll just point out, there's a pretty tight, actually a very tight Sun Moon trine in Earth. This is very cold, very practical, very Spartan, very Spartan. And the moon being in Virgo, the moon's the people. So very Spartan, except for these income extremes, which also fit quite a bit in Russia, increasingly now. A few other things I want to point out in terms of the transits. Pluto, it's just sitting here as the gatekeeper to the doorway. Pluto's at the doorway to the 7th house cusp. So any sign, anything going through Capricorn is currently going across Pluto before it enters Russia's house of allies and open enemies. And currently we have Venus and Mars there as well. Now let's take a look at a couple of other things that have been happening. I want points for this being fairly legible, by the way. In mid-February, around the 16th, Venus and Mars were conjunct here. They were conjunct on Russia's Neptune. And now this week, they're joining with Pluto on the doorway to the 7th house cusp. And what do we have? We have war. We have the threat of nuclear. That would be that Pluto power. We have lots of increasing casualties. We have lots of issues about resources. If you read the news about what's happening with the Russian military and not having enough food, or being given ancient rations, or being stopped right and left. Of course, the bombing is doing, I mean, there is bombing occurring, and it is taking out a lot of buildings and a lot of people. I don't mean to suggest that the war isn't creating havoc and destruction. That's certainly been the case. But what is about to happen with Venus and Mars? Okay, so they meet with Pluto. Pluto's again parked over here in the at the end of the 6th house, and Pluto currently at 27 Aquarius. Last year was in the year, maybe a little bit before that, was in a sextile to that Venus Pluto down there in the 5th house. So that might have been a time of a lot of even more money coming, and there might be some stories you can think of what was going on with some of that money. Of course, with it being in Scorpio, we have no way of knowing what it really was. But so this week, Venus and Mars meet up with Pluto, and then they cross into Aquarius. Venus and Mars cross into Aquarius at the degree of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of December 2020, which was effectively on the 7th house cusp of Russia. So something in Russia's new framework, new way of interacting with others, the framework locked into place, and now something is going on. Venus and Mars, coalitions coming together, and you'll notice the global alliances that are forming to isolate and to block Russia currently. And a number of countries are now applying to be in the EU, including the one that's currently being bombed. I think that there's some talk of others, but regardless, some kind of new regime coming in terms of its framework of how it deals with its adversaries or its allies even, and then Mars and then Venus are going to go across Russia's Saturn. So watch for that next week and the week after and see how that plays out in the news. Okay, the next chart. Let me clear this. Okay. That should not be chart number 2. Let me go back. Here we go. So now we have Russian Federation and a chart that that's been floating around the Organization of Professional Astrologers Facebook group for the invasion. So that's what I'm using. And what I want to point out here is, first off, notice that this is the 10th house cusp. Okay, so this chart, because of the size of the houses, is tilted. So notice that, again, we've got, I mentioned Pluto as the gatekeeper, and actually that's close enough that we're feeling it. Pluto on the 7th house cusp, Venus and Mars moving up to it, Jupiter at the spot of the May 2nd new moon, okay, the one that's coming after I am recording this. What I want to point out here is that transiting Neptune is exactly trine Venus in the 5th. So transiting Neptune in the 9th, exactly trine Venus in the 5th. And you will pull in that Pluto too, because it's only 1 degree away. So the Neptune could be martyrdom, international efforts, just anything at all that you can associate with the planet of Neptune. It could also be that there's a lot going on that we don't know about, or there's an obfuscation of what the actual, and it flows really easily into what's going on with all the money. Again, I will point out, let's see, wait a minute, there are a few other things that are real big in this chart. So Jupiter conjunct the March 2nd new moon, and that is squaring Mercury. So Jupiter squaring Mercury, Mercury in the sign of international communications, Jupiter squaring Mercury in the sign of air travel. That's a factor, that's an issue. Then we also have Jupiter in a sextile to Uranus. So that's big surprises, big stuff happening with resources, sudden and huge from an international perspective, changes of fortune involving resources, involving major resources. And if you look at what's been happening in the news in the past few days alone, the major banking systems have shut out Russia. They've denied it the ability to use to buy certain currencies, and they can still deal in some. A lot of companies have pulled out of buying Russian resources, particularly involving oil. Credit card companies have stopped processing. It's just, I mean, the impact is actually the Russian people are being turned into part of the victims and part of taking the hit for what is going on. But just watch for ways that the amplification of disruption in systems comes. Oh, there's also been a tremendous amount of hacking hitting different Russian websites, including government websites, including military websites, and information being just dumped on the web. And that will continue because this is with the new moon. All right. So that's being seeded. Watch for that. I also want to let's look at a few other really important things coming. All right. So Jupiter over the next few weeks is going to move into a conjunction with Neptune. The conjunction is exact in April. And when that happens, Jupiter and Neptune will be together trining the money planets down there in the fifth, the secrets, the hiding, the corruption. Jupiter, Neptune, will this bring almost like angelic light into it? Will it just increase the hiding and the obfuscation? Who knows? You have to just kind of watch for that. And soon after that happens, Jupiter is going to move into Aries mid-May until late October. It's going to move across into Russia's 10th house, across its midheaven, and it will square Russia's sun. And I think it will go far enough to come pretty close to squaring Russia's north node. So as early, like by the end of May, mid-May to the end of May, Jupiter is going to square that sun. Sun being the ruler, who knows what will happen with that? Could be rather explosive. Here's something else that ties into that. All right. That has to do with eclipses. The current eclipse cycle is going across the 5th and 11th house cusps in this chart. Things are coming back around again from 2003 to 2005, and the points that are getting hit currently this year do tie to 2003, when there was a lot of activity involving Chechen. There will be a solar eclipse at 10 degrees Taurus, right on top of that Uranus, April 30th. We're already feeling it. So reset button being hit in Russia's 10th house of its public reputation. 10th house also rules the leader, the president. Does not presage stability by any means. And as that happens, it's going to, while this is going on, it's going to trine Russia's north node, which is at 10. So there's a fated quality to whatever the reboot is, the upgrade is that happens growing out of the eclipse. April 30th, remember, it's not a one-day event. It will go on for some time, months. And there's a strong probability of somebody being eclipsed out at that time. Then this particular cycle, in May, there is a lunar eclipse on the two money planets down here. So mid-May, there's a lunar eclipse at 24 Scorpio. That ends cycles. That wraps a chapter up. That brings massive revelation. So if there has been incredible obfuscation by Jupiter and Neptune in April, trining that Pluto and that Venus, it won't stay hidden for very long. By the eclipse in May, ought to pull a lot of stuff to the surface. Okay, so this is all very, very big. And then in November, there is a lunar eclipse in the house that deals with, I'm not sure what the body is called. Is it called Parliament in Russia? I apologize for my geopolitical short-sightedness here, but there's going to be a lunar eclipse in November at 16 Taurus, which will be trining that Neptune, but I don't look at easy aspects when we're dealing with eclipses. Pretty much the hard ones are the ones that make things happen. But there will be some kind of revelation ending, probably something having to do with money, because do notice that Venus and Pluto, which are getting hit in May, rule the eclipse cycle that we're in, because the eclipses are in Taurus, ruled by Venus, and Pluto, Scorpio, ruled by Pluto. Okay, so now moving to the next one in theory. Okay, put these in the wrong order. I did put these in the wrong order. That always happens. I'm so sorry. Okay, so nope, I did not. I confuse easily. Excuse me. Okay, so inner ring, Russian Federation, outer ring, the transits for the invasion. What was going on? I have the feeling I've talked about this. I have talked about this. All right, so I'm confused. We're moving on. I want to go this way. Excuse me. Here we go. This is what I've been looking for. Here we are. This is not the first time. This is what's going on now is a continuation of an invasion that started, or that really got hot in 2014 when Russia took Crimea away from Ukraine. So I have the Russian Federation in the middle. I have the Crimea invasion data, again from Association of Professional Astrologers, and then the Ukraine invasion information on the outside. And I just want to point a couple of things out. Notice, interestingly, both invasions had something major at 18 Aquarius, the current one being stabilizing something, some information that got in place then, and both of those are sextile Mars in Sagittarius, which is the planet of war, and so that would facilitate action moving forward on a military strike. So our little friends down here, the Venus, Pluto, also involved. Venus, Pluto, when Crimea was taken or invaded, Saturn was on top of that, so claiming the resources at that point, claiming the money and the resources. And now we have, oh, isn't this interesting, the South Node involved. The South Node is old ways of doing things. It's what you do, it's your default behavior when you're under pressure. It's not necessarily the way you're supposed to be going. Notice also that when the Crimea campaign had Pluto on top of Uranus in Russia's chart, and now we have Jupiter sextiling that. So there's some kind of continuation and opportunity to perhaps do, well, you know, whatever Jupiter in Pisces is doing, perhaps this one has the opportunity for greater suffering or for greater relief. And notice this nice little pile up. So previously, Venus was involved. Now we have Venus and Mars and Pluto involved, moving to the doorway of the Russian Federation's 7th house cusp. Okay, now we'll play the game of does she get it right? Yes, All right. I'm not going to talk too much about the progressed chart of the Federation. I just want to point out, look at this concentration in Capricorn or in the sixth house in the progressed chart. So Venus in Sag is as far as she's going to go in Sag. She's way, way out there. And just this is, okay, progressed Uranus is on top of natal Neptune. So that's disruptive, perhaps shaking up what the image is, shaking up the illusions, disrupting oil, Neptune and Capricorn. That's oil, sorry, oil in the ground, minerals in the ground, resources in the ground, and a disruption into them. I was just really struck by that. And notice also that the progressed sun is 1 year off conjoining that natal Saturn, which says the next year will be very indicative of what is up with this country. Okay. Why is it not? It's not what this is supposed to be, of course. Welcome to my classes. All right, here we go. Solar arc directions. I don't want to get into a big discussion of what they are or what they mean, except to say that the outer ring is the converse solar arc directions, and they go backwards through the degrees, and the middle ring is just solar arc directions. They go forward, and you only pay attention to absolutely exact go. So solar arc, Jupiter is squaring natal Neptune. There's a big resource thing going on here, and an issue of agreements, with that being in Libra. Notice also 21, 22, those degrees are in, so Pluto and then Venus are in a semi-sextile to Pluto and Venus. Pluto and converse solar arc, Pluto and Venus are in a semi-sextile to natal Pluto and Venus, bringing a tremendous amount of discomfort that cannot be brushed under the carpet, having to do with wealth, secrets, power. So there's real pressure at this moment in time being put on the oligarchs, and that's what's shown with this. Mercury down here is sextile the North Node. Mercury in Scorpio. So there could be a lot of things coming out, a lot of investigations, a lot of information, a lot of research that is in an opportunity aspect to, or does something that involves the stability, daily stability of life in the country. We have more, there are a lot of semi-sextiles. Here's another one. Neptune is semi-sextile. Neptune, semi-sextile is the aspect that I say is like a piece of gravel in your shoe, and you just can't shake it around. You have to actually take your shoe off and arrange things differently to get rid of it. So there's an ongoing deception, disinformation, also international with the Sagittarius being involved, and oil. So this has a lot to do with a different way of dealing with resources and oil. And here's an, so wait a minute. So then we also have, okay, another semi-sextile involves Saturn. So solar arc Saturn is in this uncomfortable relationship with Russia's natal Saturn. There's something about how it uses authority, how it uses government, and with Saturn in Pisces, the impact on people, actual people in the country and actually elsewhere, with Pisces being unifying all, but at the same time also the influence of martyrdom and people being victimized by actions. Other things, converse solar arc moon is exactly on the ascendant. All eyes on Russia. Whole world looking at Russia in a big way. Leo, look at me, Leo, I always say. Then we have some adjustment aspects. Jupiter over here at 13, Leo, is in an adjustment aspect to that Uranus at 13 Capricorn. So huge shifts in business as usual. Big changes in Russia's identity. That's the first house, in its personality, in what it puts out in the world. And there's one other one I want to point out that is up here. Uranus is, oh, isn't this interesting? It happens both ways. So solar arc Jupiter is an adjustment aspect with natal Uranus, and I'm sorry, converse solar arc Jupiter, and solar arc Uranus is in an adjustment aspect with natal Jupiter. So huge changes, huge adjustments in Russia's personality, in its identity, and also in its relationships, with that Uranus in the 7th house being activated. Enemies and allies, huge plot twists, huge changes. Okay, let's see if I can actually get this to go. Yay. All right. Here's the chart you've been looking for. Actually, there's another one you want to. Now, birth time is kind of up in the air about Putin, so I don't know how much we can trust on this one, but I will say these placements fit with a Scorpio rising for someone who was a career in the Russian military intelligence. I mean, come on, secrets, and then all of this Libra stuff in the 12th house, backroom deals, and Saturn conjunct Neptune conjunct Mercury. That, whatever house you put it in, is a signature for gathering information on people and using it in, so like extortion, using it in agreements, using it in using secrets for negotiation, and doing it behind the scenes. So this is definitely a signature for what we've been hearing called compromat. I will also, let's see, and notice that except for that Venus in Scorpio, this is a very cold chart. Sun in Libra, all this stuff in Libra, Moon in Gemini. This is not an emotional chart by nature. This is distant, cold. Now you see me, now you don't. Wham, you know, plotting stuff and knowing how to negotiate and manipulate. All right, very clear in this. Master of it. So let's talk about, okay, Pluto down here in the house of communication, assuming this time is accurate, and with Venus and Mars moving across that Pluto, and very soon Venus and Mars heading to the beginning of Aquarius, where they will start a new way of doing things. And when they do that, they're going to trine his moon in the 8th. Now, I think moon in the 8th also fits a Scorpio rising, that secretive and being of many minds and playing fast and loose with the truth. This could all be part of it. As we look at that, though, so don't go, oh my God, he's going to get away with things, because Saturn this year is moving back and forth across his north node on the doorway to his fourth house, assuming, so it's on his north node regardless of what the time the chart is. So there is some kind of heavy reckoning about what his path in the world has been and what it is he's supposed to be doing. And when Saturn makes transits, if you've been using your energy in a responsible way, you get rewards and things solidify. And if you've been doing things in a way that has not been in integrity, then stuff starts collapsing. And then Saturn moves into his fourth, across his into his fourth house, and that would be consistent with not freedom of movement being constrained, very much so. So just watch for that. And as that happens, it's in a natural square with his Jupiter. So if this time is correct, seventh house of open enemies, allies, whatever. So there could be some governmental stuff that really comes down or affects things in a big way for him. Two other things I want to point out. So we know that Jupiter and Neptune are going to have this lovely conjunction at in the 20s of Pisces, which is going to be in an adjustment aspect to his Neptune Mercury. And it will also sextile his Jupiter. So who knows what that will bring? It's just worth watching. There may be some shifts and some repositioning that end up having to happen as a consequence of this. And the other thing is looking at what the eclipses are doing, and they're doing two things. The one in April at 10 degrees, the solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Taurus is going to be exactly opposite his Venus in Scorpio. Okay, so he's very tenacious with that Venus in Scorpio, very mysterious, very powerful, but something is going to move into a new arena with his relationships, and particularly with one-on-one relationships and allies and open enemies. So there's a big reset coming for him, and it may involve his own money. Additionally, the lunar eclipse that's happening in November will be on his Jupiter, and it kind of carries out the theme. It's at 16 Taurus, and it ends a chapter, brings a lot of secrets out, possibly about deals that he's had, possibly about money, and ends a chapter in a very dramatic way for him. Okie dokie now. All right, so here are, I just want to point a couple of things out with his progressed chart, and you're certainly welcome to pause this and stare at it yourself, but notice that his progressed Neptune is exactly on his Mercury. If the time is correct, well, whether the time is correct or not, progressed Neptune on his Mercury, not exactly rational thinking, could be very inspired, could be godly manifestations coming down, could be losing it, could be delusional, could be actual disintegration of thought processes. There's been some speculation about his health, and that certainly would fit with it. Also, his progressed moon and his progressed Mercury are in fighter mode. Mercury's been there for a while, but with Mars and Sagittarius, that would certainly incline a person to taking risks that they might not have taken before. Mars and Sagittarius just goes for it, which does not match what this person's usual method has been. But if his progressed moon is in Sag, that would make a lot of sense. Okay, now, let's clear this. Clear all drawings. All right. No, that's not what this should be. Once again. Oh, okay. His solar arc progressions, just blasting through a few of them. His solar arc Pluto is in an adjustment aspect with his moon. So there's something about his personal power, how he pushes things forward, what he does in the background. If we assume that the time is anywhere accurate, causing adjustments in his sense of safety and how he's taking information in and using that to process things for his own personal use. But it could also be that flipping, flopping, instability on an emotional level is leading to vast changes in how he expresses personal power. There is also his solar arc Mercury is in an adjustment aspect to that moon. So this is what's called a yod, or a finger of God. Solar arc Pluto and solar arc Mercury are in a sextile. They're 60 degrees apart, and each of them is 150 degrees away from the moon. So this is pushing his emotional nature, his sense of safety, his, moon in Gemini has a knack for talking themselves out of any situation, also has a knack for just disappearing. So this will be very interesting to see how that plays out. His solar arc Venus is squaring is Neptune. And again, remember, with solar arc and converse solar arc progressions, it must be exact. And it hangs around in place for a year, pretty much birthday to birthday. So there is something about money and goals and values, and not a lot of clarity. There can be idealizing. Venus and Neptune both rule love, higher love, but Venus is also a very indulgent planet, and Neptune can be unhooked from reality. So this is a second indicator that perhaps the thought processes aren't operating in a way that they used to. And there's a third indicator of that up here. Neptune, converse solar arc Neptune at 13 Leo is in a sextile to his sun, which is an open doorway. Neptune and Leo, I don't know, maybe this is grandiosity. Again, there's a potential here for a higher playing out, but these three together are kind of backing up that the thought process is not what it had been, and it may not at all be rational. Okay, so here we have how he fits in with the Russian Federation. I told you there are going to be a lot of charts. So the Russian Federation is in the middle. He's the outer ring. And notice that all of his Libra falls in the 4th house of homeland. So he has used his ability to make these deals, to gather this information, to use it to create arrangements, maybe even hidden arrangements, has been part of the homeland. And I want to point out that, so his Venus is sextile the country's north node, and a lot of people have, at least until recently, talked about how their quality of life improved, their access to money and resources has been better living in the country with him as president. So that is one thing. Also, his Venus is in a sextile to Jupiter in Russia's third house of communication. So that Venus in Scorpio, that's the former military security guy with the information flow about the country. Remember that there are eclipses happening, that there's one in April at 10 Taurus, and the last time this happened, there were Chechen suicide bombings in 2003, and this one is in this really easy aspect to Russia's north node. But more importantly for this chart, remember that eclipse is going to be exactly opposite Putin's money planet in the money sign, in the hidden money sign. So publicly coming out in a way that affects has an impact on Russia's public standing, whatever this ends up being. And there is also, well, in terms of the, the other one I want to mention, the May 15 eclipse at 24 Scorpio squares his Pluto. So it's a lunar eclipse in May, which brings revelations. I don't know. There's been talk of the International Criminal Court already looking into war crimes, even though this particular phase of the war is less than a week old as I am recording this. That might be part of what happens under this as well. Okay. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. Interesting character. Look, okay. I mean, it's got to be with what you've been seeing out of him. Sun, Venus fused in Aquarius, the sign of the people, in the 9th house of broadcasting when he was on TV, but also foreign relations. And he's been able to speak to values, to progressive humanitarian values lately. Also notice, who remembers I said watch 5 degrees Aquarius? His sun, Venus, is on Russia's Saturn. We'll look at those two charts together in a second. So that is a big thing. Also look at his moon is in Leo, which can be fearless. His Saturn toward the end of, also very dramatic. Saturn toward the end of Leo is trining Russia's progressed Venus, which I think was 29 Sag. Someone will go back and look. I am certain. Note that natally, his Pluto in Libra is square his Mercury in Capricorn. This guy speaks out. And I mentioned this in the earlier video with Lorraine Appleyard, but if you've ever dealt with someone who's a comedian, particularly if they're a stand-up comedian or they write their own stuff, there is for no other word, best word for it is a ballsiness. There is a daring. There is a saying outrageous things and speaking to power, which he does with this. I also want to notice, look, okay, so he's got Gemini rising, and we just came off eclipses in Gemini and Sagittarius. They were going on for the past two and a half years, and the June 2021 eclipse was at 20 degrees. There was a solar eclipse at 20 Gemini. So this cycle completely reset his identity, which I think you could see happening with someone who started out as a comedian who is now in the position he's in. The final eclipse in December was a solar eclipse on his Neptune, and he's now becoming an inspirational figure. A prominent Neptune can be someone who acts as a beacon for other people. A few other things I want to mention. So we've mentioned several times about Pluto being at 27 Capricorn and Venus and Mars going across that. First off, when Venus and Mars were conjunct on February 16th, they were conjunct on really close to his Mercury in the 8th house of intimacy, resources, what you've invested in, things that scare you. So I am betting that he had information at that point about the way the wind was blowing and how serious things were getting, regardless of what he was telling people about, nothing's happening, don't worry. So then we have Venus and Mars moving across his Pluto, and then on the 6th, they're going to be at 0 degrees Aquarius. And then what are they going to do? They're both going to move over his Sun and Venus. This can only be beneficial for him in the 9th house, bringing attention to him, legal stuff, international things. Just watch. Also note what is going on with, so we've got Jupiter here, Neptune here. So Jupiter is in his 10th house, bringing lots of attention to him. It's going to move over into his 11th house of group associations. It also has to do with the governmental legislative body in Ukraine, and possibly even other governmental, quasi-governmental bodies like the EU. He just signed an application for Ukraine to join the EU, European Union. So Jupiter is going to move to Neptune, and there'll be this conjunction in April. It will be squaring his Jupiter when that happens. So he will be chatting up a lot, tons of stuff that he will be forced to say. Actually, it's going to be a grand trine, although it'll be a very wide grand trine because it'll also be squaring his Neptune. But even though a couple of things could come from this, all right, there are a lot of people who are saying fairly dire things about the seriousness of the situation that he's in. Now, you can just look at it just from the news and know that that is a reality. But there are a number of people who've been looking at things astrologically and basically freaking out for his safety. So the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction could elevate him even more into a spiritual leader. It could bring martyrdom, but if it doesn't look like it's violent martyrdom. It might be mysterious martyrdom, and we know that there's precedent for that, but that is not what I'm predicting. So do not go away from this and tell people that I said anything less than optimistic about this man's continued role on this planet, because I happen to think he has a tremendous amount more to do. Okay, so just looking at his progressions, there are only a few things I want to point out here. In the 11th house, notice his pileups in the 11th, very, very public. And look at, he's got progressed Mercury, Venus, South Node, fighter, all, and the moon, all in fighter mode. What are we seeing out of him? We are seeing, I'm not leaving. Moon in Aries is, where's the fire? It's running into the fire. It's standing up, it's defending, it's saying, I'm going to kick your teeth in. You ever seen the president of a country in combat fatigues? I haven't in all of my years. This is not an act on his part. He actually has very, very fiery influences in him, and he would be kicking up a storm under any circumstances in his life. This happens that this is the way they're playing out at this moment. So that's the main thing I want to point out from his progressed chart. Again, this is not exhaustive. It's just exhausting. Yes. Okay. So now I've got four more. We're in the home stretch. All right. So, okay. This is just for those of you who want to look at things. These are his on the outer ring solar arc, converse solar arc progressions, inner ring solar arc progressions. I have no comment on any of this. If you look at it, just remember, it has to be an absolutely exact by degree aspect for it to have any significance. I want to look at his chart with the Russian Federation. All right, now, remember that 5 degrees Aquarius? There we go. He is embodying values of, Aquarius, democracy, maybe, values of the people. He embodies his people. He embodies their values. And so is Russia the boot on the values? Is he going to, is he illuminating the restrictions of Russia? Well, looky here, his Mars is right on Russia's ascendant. He is the person to fight them boldly, possibly ridiculously. And his Saturn is in an out of sign conjunction with Russia's moon, which is the people. His Saturn is conjunct the people of Russia. So his embodiment of leadership actually has something to do with the Russian people. We'll have to see how that plays out. His Pluto down here at 16 degrees Libra is square. Oh, look. Russia's Neptune. What would you think might possibly be more? I mean, that's standing up. That's standing up right there. That's the fearlessness. And I, you know, in a battle between Pluto and Neptune, I personally would side with Pluto. Just me. His Mercury is on Russia's Uranus. So that's speaking out, speaking up. Also, I might go back for a second to his Saturn being on Russia's moon. I have heard reports attributed, but I can't verify these. I have heard reports attributed of statements of concern for what's happening to the Russian soldiers, by the way its own country is treating them, statements of concern for what's happening to the Russian people. And if those are in fact true, they would fit with this. All right. What does he do to Putin's chart? His Pluto in Libra is on Putin's Saturn. His use of power and summoning of primal forces is on top of Putin's control of agreements, his legislative control. Zelensky's moon is on Putin's south node. This is a karmic contact. If you were to look at things from a past life perspective, this would be one indicator that they've been related before. And there is a real rivalry here with it being in Leo. So there's like possibly a royalty aspect. Also notice his Saturn is on Putin's Pluto, but it's not as close. So we've got it going reciprocally. All right. Zelensky's Pluto is on Putin's Saturn really tightly. Zelensky's Saturn is loosely on Putin's Pluto. So they have a big dynamic of power. And I'm going to say it once again, I think Pluto overrides Saturn. Saturn imposes control. This is why he's able to marshal his country to stand up. And I regret I could not find a chart for Ukraine. So we're using him as the stand-in for it. And just that one aspect right there says it all to me, actually. He trumps his power. His Uranus is widely conjunct Putin's Venus. So he's a destabilizing factor in the resources that Putin has, the power and the resources that he has clung to, hung on to. And Zelensky's Neptune is sextile Putin's Saturn. So he's taking the higher international route, actually, in a way. And he's the one calling for peace talks. You'd say, sure, right. Why wouldn't the person who was being invaded call for peace talks? But Neptune talking to Saturn would say, can't we work this out in some way? Saturn would say, nope, we're not going to. And then that Pluto on top of the Saturn would say, well, it's your doom. Remember that phrase, okay? And, oh my God, we're at the final one. Can you believe it? All right, what does the invasion chart bode for President Zelensky? Okay, first off, remember his 10th house, his house sizes are very inconsistent. So his actual 10th house cusp is where I have drawn this. All right, so notice Saturn, transiting Saturn at the invasion is on Zelensky's midheaven. So he's at a time of enormous obligations, enormous responsibilities. Some might say crushing. When Saturn enters your 10th house, it is a time of testing your expertise, testing your role out in the world. You could possibly, if you rise to the occasion, you will rise in your public standing. If you misuse your authority, misuse your power, things will happen to you. Saturn will bring the cosmic 2x4 down on you. So this man has massive obligations and karma, and it involves the entire people on him publicly right now with that Saturn right there. It is trine his Pluto, right? Am I correct? Where's his Pluto? Yes. So it's trine his Pluto. So he's got natural power, and oh, we're seeing a fearlessness come out that is fueling what he does and how he presents himself as a leader and an authority out in public. And it's also sextile, transiting Saturn is also sextile his Neptune at 17 Sagittarius. So he's able to make, as a leader, spiritual or higher appeals, especially internationally, and using the airwaves, using broadcasting to get messages out. The new moon of March 2nd is really important here. Let's look at. So it's moving into a square to his Neptune that could increase somebody's desire to make a martyr out of him. It's also, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, particularly involving resources, with the sextile between transiting Jupiter and transiting Uranus. Transiting Jupiter is in an adjustment aspect to his moon, and it's moving into a square, which I mentioned earlier, to his Jupiter. So he's only going to be more and more and more vocal with this. Jupiter, Venus and Mars are in his 8th house of shared resources. It's also the house of mortality. And do note that they're not going to meet Pluto in that house. They will meet Pluto in his 9th house. Now, it's still going to be close to the 8th. So this does mean this is a dangerous time, but I do not believe this spells doom. I will also point out that transiting Saturn is squaring his Uranus in the 6th, so his daily routine is completely disrupted. And I mean, there could be some weird sudden thing that happens. So all the rest of us who are riding on all of this Piscean energy, the Piscean Neptunian energy, I think he is a receptacle with that Neptune in the 11th. He's a spiritual leader. He's an inspirational figure for groups, and I think he's a natural receptacle for all of the love and protection and good energy that people are beaming on him. All right, I did it. You're probably going, oh my God, make her quiet. Again, if this was useful to you, 2 things. If you want the slides, send me a message and tell me how to get them to you. I will send you the PDF slides. And I know 2 people immediately who are going to ask for them, at least. And secondly, again, I'm not monetizing this video. I am not charging for this. Please make a donation for some type of refugee relief involving one of the many places on this planet where people's lives are being disrupted by war. If you choose to donate to me or to my channel, please say that you're doing it because of this video, and any money I receive, I will give to the kitchen that's in place, the world, I can't remember why I can't say it, it's World Something Kitchen. So thank you very, very much, and please comment below. All right, everyone, be safe, and we're done.